On the 21st of April 2018, I had my daughter. Shortly after that, like when she turned 3 months, my mom died. Has your world ever been shaken? Baka you're like, isn't he gani God? Like, I don't get. Mentally, I really struggled. I was extremely depressed. And this one day I came home and I thought, I don't want to live like this anymore. And in that moment, I thought of buying tablets, putting in her milk, and putting in my food. And we just sleep. It was very dark. It was very cold. And in that moment, a friend of mine called. She's like, hi, how are you doing? Like, yeah, I'm not okay. And I don't know if I'll make it to the morning. And he told me, I'm calling someone. I want you to speak to them right now because you have to make it to the morning. And so it was a therapist. And we talked and talked. The only thing I remember from that conversation is she said, whatever you have to do, just hold on until you get to the morning. And I remember telling my nanny, achukue mtoto alale na yeye. Because I knew if I would probably go through with it. So, I don't know what I did, but I held on until the morning. And so basically, actually, that is what set me on the path of therapy. That was actually my first journey with therapy. When I met this guy, when I met him, I was training. So I was training in public speaking. So he used to own a restaurant for my Valia kids. And that's why we do our trainings. And how he presented himself. My words. Poised, very well dressed, always looking sharp, very mature. So you can imagine for a girl who's used to dating terrorists. This gentleman was just everything I'd hoped for. And so we started going out on a few dates. So we went out on a few dates, like 2 or 3 dates, I think. And actually, the first time we got intimate is the first time I got pregnant. So when I realized, okay, something could be going on with my body. I remember I said it jokingly to a friend, like, I think I'm pregnant. Like, where? The minute a woman says that, you guys go and get tested. So she carries herself, goes and buys the pregnancy kits. I bought like 4, because I've had these false positives. So yeah, the first one could be a false positive. And when you're pregnant, the minute you dip that strip like this, it doesn't wait. It's like, ulizaga nilini. And you're like, hey, 2 lines. What? Like, this must be the false positive. Kairusha mali sana. I took another one. Like, let me take another pee sample. Hey, this one is damaged. I took worse and I took another pee sample. Guy, didn't even wait. I'm like, what? I know. I did it 3 times. It was confirmed I am pregnant. There's no 2 ways around it. I am definitely expectant. And that's when I texted my friend. I was like, babe, kameumana. She was like, nakao. She came. We cried. Because now what do we do? We have no jobs. We live in our parents' houses. What do we do? Hey. Babe, mtoto moja haizi tushinda. I was like, guys, kani kufua tutafua. Like, okay, fine. So we tried calling this gentleman and telling him, I've stopped referring to him as a gentleman. I call him this dude. Tried calling this dude. So he doesn't pick. Now, before I actually went to confirm, I'd actually told him that I think I could be expectant. And that's when he told me, in my spirit, I am not convinced. For a man to have that level of certainty that I am not expectant, like, at that point, maybe I should have asked myself, why? But I didn't, so I knew. Now, so me and my girl, we found out, yeah, so this is real. So the next hurdle was telling my mother, like, yo, So you see this girl that you educated in so much trouble, who's been so much trouble all her life. Apparently, the trouble continues. And now she's pregnant. And then the icing on the cake. Imagine, even the guy has rukad. What? So, yeah, so I remember I timed it. So because there's no way to say this. And I was terrified of my mom because she could be mean. So I just blurted it out and she was playing video games on her phone or something. And I just told her, yeah, Mom, I have something to tell you. She's like, what is it? Like, I'm pregnant. I'm trying to remember what was said next. All I remember is going to bed thinking, if I am not killed in my sleep, I don't know. So I went to bed. I woke up the next day, and now we had a conversation. Yes. She was like, let me not react before I kill this girl. Nini will. So yeah, the next morning we had now that conversation. She asked me about the guy. So of course now you're embarrassed to say, you know what, he's not even picking my calls anymore. Nini. She's like, call him nikiona. I called. Of course, eventually akazima simu. So my mother was like, okay. And I remember the words she said to me in that moment was, I will not lie to you, Kwe. Being a single parent is hard. It is hard work. But if you focus, you'll make it. I was like, cool. Like, actually thought you were going to kill me, but that is so much better than you killing me. Okay. Yeah, and I think that's where me and my mom actually kind of became closer. I think she felt more empathy in that moment. And she kind of knew, yeah, you're about to be on a T for tough road. And you need the support you can get. Because when she always told me when she was expectant with our firstborn, she didn't get a lot of support. And so she said, you know, I would not want that to be your story as well. I would not want to repeat that. So yeah, we started that journey. It was very hard. I lived with a lot of regrets, you know, in that pregnancy. I was always regretting my choice of the person I chose to have this friend. Unfortunately, even people who were close to me, some of the stuff they said compounded that feeling of regret, because they were like, how can we trust you to be a good parent when we can't trust you to pick the right partner? I'm like, guys, hold on. Those of you who are busy judging have only survived by the mercy of God. But like, you know, and yeah, and I think that's one of the things we have to be very careful about, especially when people are going through their hardest times. It is so easy to throw stones, but be careful, you're not living in a glass house. And if something is not going to build, if it's not going to edify, if it's not going to lift up or even encourage somebody, like, bro, you don't have to say it. Sometimes just keep your opinion to yourself. You know, they say something about opinion that it's the lowest form of human intelligence because it does not require any scrutiny. Like, I can have an opinion about anything and nobody can question that opinion. But I think sometimes we have to guard our tongues, you know, and resist the urge to say stuff. Because I've always wondered, why was that statement necessary? Why was it important to be said to me at that time? You know, because it's not like you can make me feel any worse than I already do. It's not possible. So anyway, we go through that season. And I remember this one time when I was deep down and I was starting to go into the path of depression where I was not even showering, didn't want to get out of bed. I was kind of hoping I would just sleep and die. I started being suicidal again. And I remember one time I went to the clinic, you know, for these checkups. And instead of gaining weight, I was actually losing weight. We got into a place where they were concerned about gestational diabetes. And this chick was looking at me and thinking, what is wrong with you? Like, what's going on with you? And one time this lady, now she was an older lady, and she called me aside and she asked me, Nini Nimbaya, every time your chat is not going the way, it's actually going the reverse. And she was like, unfortunately, you're not the first person, and neither will you be the last person. But if you do not get yourself to a place where you accept this is your reality. Either you or the child is not going to make it. And I remember going home and just praying. And I was like, God, I know I've messed up for the 1 millionth time, but I don't think I can do this without you. And the only way I get to do this, God, is if you remove this person from my heart. And that was my prayer, by the Mungu nitolee mtu kwa roho yangu. And I can't tell you when or how, but eventually it just happened. And I started to thrive. And I think I started to thrive in my last trimester, which was kind of weird. Because like for 6 months, I've been going through hell. But in my last trimester, things started to, balance out. I rested more. I think I kind of just said, when I come, whether I'm ready for it or not. And it helped that I had family support. It helped that I had my friends to support me. One of my friends was a nurse, so she was my go-to person for symptoms. Oh, I'm feeling like this and like this. She's like, okay, for this one, buy Crips. For this one, do this. For this one, do this. So that's how I got to that pregnancy. The guy wasn't around, so I just survived through love from friends and family. And I had my daughter on the 21st of April, 2018. Very healthy, very beautiful, very tall. Very tall little girl. She's tall. Like her mother is a dwarf compared to her. Like, unja na discipline hivi. Wewe nimekwambia uache mchezo. Even anawa discipline no mtoto. But yeah, so she came, and I think in that moment I realized I have to do better. I have to do better for her. She deserves better. And shortly after that, like when she turned 3 months, when she turned 3 months, my mom died. And what? Has your world ever been shaken? Baka you're like, isn't it gonna God? Like, I don't get. I remember when people were crying and falling apart. I didn't have tears, not because I didn't think I could cry, but I just kept wondering, if I start crying now, will I ever stop? And for me, it was a grief so profound that I felt like tears couldn't even begin to, to express how I was feeling. So I didn't cry. The main people kept trying to tell me, you don't have to be strong. You don't have, no, guys, I'm not being strong. I just do not know, how to deal with this. And so after she was laid to rest, a lot of that time, actually the year after that, is a blur for me, because I feel like I just survived it. I don't even know how my baby grew up. I'm so grateful for family support, because they kind of stepped in and helped me with caring for her. Because I struggled, man. Mentally, I really struggled. I was extremely depressed. After that, I remember I had a job in a school. I was working as an administrator. And this one time, I'd gone for a whole week without sleeping. And this one day I came home and I thought, I don't want to live like this anymore. But I looked at her and I was like, I can't leave her like this either. And in that moment, I thought of buying tablets, putting in her milk, and putting in my food. And we just sleep. And now when I think about that moment, and I think about that cloud of dark, because I remember how the house felt. It's very dark. I was thinking these thoughts in the dark. It was very dark. It was very cold. And I think back to that moment, and I thank God that, like I've said, my life has always had this duality of craziness and stability. And in that moment, a friend of mine called. She's like, hi, how are you doing? Like, yeah, I'm not okay. I'm not okay, and I don't know if I'll make it to the morning. And he told me, I'm calling someone. I want you to speak to them right now. because you have to make it to the morning. And so it was a therapist, and we talked and talked and talked. And the only thing I remember from that conversation is she said, hold on until the morning. If you have to stay awake, if you have to watch something till morning to distract yourself, if you have to give the child to the nanny, alale maye, whatever you have to do, just hold on until you get to the morning. And I remember telling my nanny, achukue mtoto alale naye, because I knew if I would probably go through with it. So I don't know what I did, but I held on until the morning. And in the morning, I had a session with her. That's when I realized I'm in trouble. I'm in deep, deep trouble. And so basically, actually, that is what set me on the path of therapy. That was actually my first journey with therapy. So I was prescribed mood stabilizers for a while. And she told me, what I want you to do is if we can find someone who can care for the child for a while, well, we get you better. Because you can't be a good parent if you're in this state. And I knew that. Like, I knew I can't parent well like that. So I called up my aunt and I asked if she could take my daughter for a while. And I think I slept for like 2-3 days. Just, not doing anything. I just wake up, eat, sleep. Wake up, eat, sleep. But that's when I realized I have a lot of grief. And I had never learned how to process grief. And so when grief happens, it's kind of like I feel like I have to bury it or don't let it be seen. Like it's something you have to deal with. And now when I think back to that, I start to wonder, when did I start to learn this pattern? And it goes back to when I was in primary school. The first time I said something about something that's going on and I was told to be quiet about it. And so over time, when terrible things happen to me, I'm quiet about it. And eventually, you're only human. You can only deal with so much. You can only hold in so much. And so there will be a breaking point. And for me, it was after my mom's death. And I think this was like a year after she died. That was my breaking point. I had hit rock bottom properly. And not many people knew how bad it was. And every day it was a constant battle to not give up. Every day it was a constant battle to not give up. To the point that I felt I couldn't live alone anymore. And so I moved in with my aunt. I resigned from my job and I moved in with my aunt. So from that space is when I think now I kind of started to do the work of unpacking, what's going on, why are you in the space. But I'd be lying if I said that immediately after therapy things started to get better. I think we have this thing, unazoke kunywa dawa, like when you go to hospital, like you're sick, right? So they give you medication. After like 2 or 3 days, you start to feel better. And then the medication becomes like, this is a problem. Why do I have to keep taking this, right? But often, if you don't finish the dosage, the thing comes back, right? And sometimes it comes back even resistant to what you were given in the first place. So that's kind of what happened. When I started to feel better, I stopped paying attention to now, doing the therapy, going to therapy. Because I was like, see, now I'm good. See, now I feel okay. And I felt so okay that I said I can move out and live on my own. And I did. And for a while, about 2-3 years, I was good. I was really good. Until I started working for a multinational. And it is a very high pressure environment. So we'd we'd have like a lot of work to do all the time. And it's always, pressure, 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 pressure. This has to be done. This needs to be done. So at some point, the pressure started to get to me. But then again, it's simply because you've not developed enough coping mechanisms to know when is it too much? When do I? And when you've gone through abuse, one of the things that happens is because you have this fear of rejection. You become a people pleaser, right? And so I would never say no, even when I am at the point of I cannot take on anymore. But I would still not say no. And what happened was I started to notice I sleep a lot more. So even on days when I'm not working, I'm not getting out of bed. I started to notice I'm not drawing my curtains, so I'm not letting light into the house. I started to notice I'm always sick. I'm always having a flu or something like that. And then I started to notice so is my daughter. She was always sick. Like for a lot of the time I was working in that facility, we spent a lot on our insurance. We had medical cover, yes, but we spent like a lot. I think when I was coming to the end of the year, I think I was one of the people who had actually spent my outpatient like quite a bit. One time when I was at work, when I was leaving work and I was just so done, so defeated, I was at the stage and I'm looking at the road and thinking, if I just walked into Ngong Road right now, this would be over. Like this is it. Like all the noise, all the weariness, all of it, if you just walked into that road right now, it would be over. And that's when I realized, oh no, I'm going back. I'm going back into that pattern. And so this time around, thankfully, because of the few times I'd been into therapy, I knew how to identify a crisis. So I knew I'm in a crisis. And so I just told the HR, no, man, I need to get help. I'm in this and this situation. And so I found a therapist. So I actually went to see a therapist who referred me to a psychiatrist. And from the first session, it was clear that, you do need some help getting back to a place of stability. So again, I started again a journey of therapy and treatment to get myself back to a place but this time, I was determined to not go back to feeling that way again. Like I was determined that this thought of if I'm not around, things get easier. I have to deal with this once and for all. Like this cannot be keeping me victimized for the rest of my life. So I have to deal with this thought. And so, so the guy I was seeing is called Dr. Amadi. And one of the things he recommended, our very first session was like, I need you to stop dating. No, forget that one. And like, hey, no, man, you and guys, no. The first thing we're doing in this treatment is you'll stop dating. I listen to him like, what? Like, because Farah, dating for you is a crutch. It is what is keeping you from looking at what is going on. It's what is keeping you from dealing with the stuff that you're dealing with. And so I asked him, for how long?
For how long?
He laughed. So was like, for 1 year. Like, no, 6 months. Compromise here is 6 months. So he said, fine, we'll start with 6 months. And it's funny now, but the minute I removed that from the equation, actually is when I started to realize, look, first of all, you're dating the same guy over and over again, right? And there must be a reason why this person is attractive. When we started to now do the unpacking, is when I realized, shit, I have been abused most of my life. And because that's like the coding that I have, it seems to be the only way I can identify in a relationship. If a relationship, I've had guys, and let me tell you, they're not many, they're only 2. I've had guys who've been so stable, so kind, so loving, but I promise I have done the damage. I was a problem in those relationships. I would constantly push their boundaries. I would constantly try and rattle them, get them to a place where they're upset or angry. I would cross boundaries so many times. I didn't even see this myself. So when I started to do the work with Dr. Ahmad is when I started to realize, yo, man, I'm not okay. Like, I should not be out in the streets, guys. I should be locked up. Like, I am not okay. But the more we did the work, the more he told me, one thing I want you to know is you will not unpack everything with these sessions. Sometimes we'll only be able to deal with one, but there'll be 5 other things that are still to be dealt with. And he left me with something that has stayed with me now, even like 4 or 5 years, even after I stopped seeing him. He said, you will have to do the work of healing for the rest of your life. It never stops. And so give yourself grace, when you find yourself going back into old patterns. But every time I've gone back into an old pattern, it has always been with the knowledge that, yeah, this is familiar. I'm choosing this because this is familiar. And some things, especially when it has come to dating, some things it has taken a lot to break free from that. There's a gentleman I dated. No, rephrase. There's a guy I dated. I'm like, yeah, what? Gentle, what? And it's a lie. So there's a guy I dated, and he was so narcissistic in his behavior. Love bombing was not something I knew. But when he'd offend me, or when he'd suspect that I'm pulling away, or just like, I'm done with your BS, he'd come back like the Luo he is, my guy. Where? Hey, what do you want? Where do you want to eat? Where do you want to go? Like, no place was off limits. So me with like a small mind, I would think of only like restaurants and stuff. Now I'm looking back, I'm like, I should have said I wanted a Vitz or a Shamba or something like that. So I need to look at like t-shirt in the Peleke Kempinski. You should not do it. Anyway, there's no point in regret. It is over, it is over. But I struggled with that relationship because it had just enough dosage of what I thought a healthy relationship would look like, and just enough dosage of what I knew as familiar in terms of chaos. So that was one of the relationships I really struggled with, like, letting go. And so we'd break up for like 3 months, and then with just one phone call, I'm back. We'd do the whole shenanigan. I've cried, He'd be like, I'm so sorry, I put you on ice. Sometimes I would tell my friends about these things. They'd look at me with a face of, hey, babes, you're not seeing this is the weapon that was fashioned against you. Like, you're not seeing this man for what he is. Every time he comes in your life, it's like a storm. It's like everything you have built, he just comes and it's all gone. And it's like you're building back again. And it's every single time. There is no time your interaction with this person ends well. And finally, what broke the camel's back, one time my daughter got a stomach thing, and we had to go to a pediatrician, because when I called him and explained what was happening, he was like, yeah, I think you need to come in. So the previous night, I'd called this person and I told him, it's like this. She's not feeling well, and I really don't want to go alone, because the last time I went alone, we ended up admitted and it was not a nice experience. So he was like, fine, no problem. Is it okay if I pick you guys up at 9? I was like, yeah. So I knew, like in my mind, I knew, at least I'm not going to go alone. So to Kamka, I got my baby ready. I got myself ready. So I'm looking at the clock. He's not called, it's 9. So I call. He's asleep. So in my mind, the sensible thing to say is, give me 30 minutes, let me get ready, I am coming. He told me, let me send you Uber. He sent me cab fare. But that time I was so broke, I couldn't even he send it back. I just took it because how would you do? So I took it. hata tukuchukua Uber, mimi nilikwenda Mats because I need jamaa vile amenianzia tu tutarudi huku tukitembea. So we went, fika Hosi. Of course, this whole time I'm disappointed. I'm feeling very hurt by this. But it's over time. Now you're getting to a place where you're able to see this pattern and you're able to see, this is not somebody who cares about you. This is somebody who is very manipulative by nature. And you need to get to a place where you see it for yourself, right? Because even therapy, that's what they do. They just give you the tools to be able to see it for yourself and make the right decision for you. It might not be the right decision for somebody else, but the right decision for you. So we get to Hosi. I call him. I tell him this is the bill. I was like, so I'm sending. So I'm like, are you coming though? Like, no, you see my car, it needs to go to the garage. Where? That is why I was done with guys in suits. Baby, me, guys in suits. No. Don't even look my... No. Mini patia mtu wa mjengo. Give me guys in blue collar. Those guys are reliable, even if they have nothing. They are reliable. Listen, I was about to say, this is MFs in suits. What the hell? I know what. Don't even look at me. What do you mean? Yeah. When I realized that his priority in that moment, for somebody who says they love me, his priority in that moment, actually, he never said he loved me ever. I was always the one. So that time I said, I love you, he said, thanks. I'm not joking. Yes, I still said, I love you, he said, thanks. Hey, Farab. So for me, in my mind, he loved me. But clearly now, I see it. Yeah, no. So when it finally hit me that in this moment where I'm most vulnerable and most in need, the easiest thing for him to do, because he's a person who was, financially, he's very blessed. For him, I've always told him, the easiest thing for you to do is throw money at people. Like, that is so easy for you to do. But when somebody needs you to show up as a person, that's why you draw the line. So he was like, Susani, see, I've already sent the money for the cab. See, I've already paid the bill. I was like, yeah, and that's great. But what I really needed was you here. And in that moment, he was like, you're just ungrateful. I was like, you know what? Yeah. I think now I see what people have been trying to tell me for almost 1 year. That you two are not compatible in this way. You are a people person. You show up for people. Whether you have money, you show up. But this person, it's not him. And because of that, you guys are just not compatible. So that was a hard thing to do, but in that moment, I blocked him and I told myself, yeah, never again. Like, we're not picking his calls. If we meet on the streets, duck. Hide under a car if that's what it takes. But do not put yourself in a position where you meet with this person again. But why I was sharing that example is because I want somebody who listens and they've been struggling to give themselves grace for repeating something over and over and over and over. I would just say, keep doing the work. Because one day you'll have built up enough muscle to say, I'm done. And that's it. And you'll have walked away, right? So for me, it took a long time for me to get to the place where I can start saying no. So in that same year, I told this dude no. It's also the same year I quit my job where I was. I was like, no, I'm done with this environment. And now when I look back, I realize all this saying no was finally as a result of me starting to get to a place where I not only know that I deserve better, so it's not just like knowledge up here, but it's knowledge in here. So I not only know it, I start to believe it for myself. I'm like, no, I deserve a better working environment than this. No, I deserve a better relationship than this. Even my immediate family relationships, I started to draw boundaries, which is something I had never done before. But I was finally in a space where I was ready to say, look, my circle may have 2 or 3 people, but you know what? The people I can trust. The people who have repeatedly shown me over time, I can rely on them. And that's okay. I used to be the kind of person my phone would ring like off the hook. But when I started to put down boundaries, when I started to say no, when I started to say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to show up for that, or I can't do that for you, I started to ring less. But then also, I started to have more peace. So putting up these boundaries and just enforcing them, even when it hurt me or even when it felt like this was the worst thing ever, it helped me start getting to a place where I am now creating something I had never experienced before, but that was safety. And specifically emotional safety and cognitive safety. So I'm not in spaces where I'm being taken advantage of, abused, or lied to or manipulated. I'm in spaces where I can be myself for who I am, and where I feel like a boundary has been crossed, I can communicate it without fear that these people will either walk away or this relationship will end, right? So that was the same year, and that was like what? That was like last year? Yeah, I think it was last year. So you can imagine from when I was a child, that was like 98, 99 to 2024. That's like a really long time, right? For you to be on that journey of figuring yourself out and learning something as basic as boundaries and saying no. So I left the work. I ended the relationship. I owed him money, by the way, the dude. So I owed him like 40 G's or something. And so I remember telling my friend, I need to work so hard and pay him back. She looked at me like I'd spit in her face. She's like, you're paying him back? I'm like, yeah, sini pesa yake. Girl! She could not believe that my priority list was paying this person. Like, na zile matime amekufanya ulie. Zile matime amekuacha stranded. Hizo matime anakulipa aje. I was like, well, okay, I never thought of it like this. Like, actually, if you ask me, he owes you more. But I was like, okay. She told me, look, you're finally free of this person. Don't put yourself in a situation where you start to have a conversation with him again. Because he will look, narcissists don't like being left. They prefer to leave because it gives them that power trip, right? So when you leave, it's like a spit in their face. Like, who are you to leave the almighty me? So any excuse you give this person, whether it is, hi, I am returning your 5K, it'll be like, fanya hivi, why don't you come over here? And then you're back into it all over again. And she said to me, no. Na kama unataka kumlipa kwanza nipatie mimi ndo nitamtumia. Me, he cannot talk to me that way. I was like, what? Even these guys have had enough of this dude and they're not even dating you. They're like, tumechoka na yeye bwana. We are tired of this man. We are tired. But yeah, so in 2024, I left my job. And I had no savings, I had no plan. I just decided, you know what? Yeah, I'm done with these spaces. And I moved back home to the house where we used to live as children with nothing. Literally, I only had my bed, na vyombo, and myself and my daughter. Like, that's all we had. But I said, this is where I'm starting. This is where I'm starting, and this is where I'm rebuilding from. And in the same, early this year is when I came out with a story about what happened when I was in primary school. And it opened a Pandora's box, especially when I realized it didn't just happen to me. And the pattern that I saw over time was that there was an escalation even, to the point that now for me, it may have been inappropriate touching, it may have been that groping, that intimidation. But for some people, some of the victims, it went as far as sexual assault. And when I read those things and some of the comments that the administration made, even when they were confronted by these truths, like, we tried to speak up, but the teacher was protected. And the question was, he was protected by whom, if not their administration? And I've always felt that the teachers had a responsibility to protect all those children. They may want to distance themselves from it now, but too late. Too late. The damage is done. You're seeing how long it has taken me to get to a place where I can talk about it without it being crippling, like without me choking over the thought of it. My very first time to have a panic attack, a proper panic attack, is when the story came out. And of course, guys in that school, in Lily Academy, saw it and they were confronting the administration about it. And someone sent me a screenshot of the headmistress saying, kama wanapita hata akiwashikashika, shida iko wapi? I couldn't breathe. I could not breathe. I felt like I was going to die. I felt like someone had put their hands around my neck. Because it was not fair. It was not fair what they allowed to happen. It should not have happened. It was not a secret. Clearly, it was not a secret. It's not something that they can say they didn't know it was happening. They knew. And to see how many lives were damaged as a result of that. And thing is, I've done so much work in terms of therapy to get to a place where I can talk about it. But there's still people who confided in me, and it's like the experience is happening to them all over again. And I know that the road ahead for them is so tough, and it's not straight, and it's going to look messy. But I'm glad that maybe by me speaking up, somebody gets to start to heal, right? But it shouldn't have had to be like that. I don't think any child deserves that. I don't think any child deserves that. So after a while, I thought, what can I do about it? So I went to FIDA, I went to Cradle. As these are all organizations that deal with women's rights, children's rights. And for everybody that I spoke to, I also went to Wangokanja Foundation. And everybody that I spoke to, the challenge was always one: evidence. So many years now, how are we going to prove that this happened? And I remember thinking, isn't it enough that I'm telling you that it happened? Like, my life is evidence of what happened. Everything that I have gone through, all the different times that, if not by the grace of God, it would have been over. Sometimes I remember, currently I'm in therapy, and I remember telling my therapist, if I had died, maybe they would have paid attention. If maybe when I tried suicide when I was in class 7, that final attempt in primary school, maybe they would have paid attention. Maybe something would have been done at that point. And she said to me, well, maybe, but your voice would never have been heard if you had died at that point. And so I think for me, knowing now and knowing, because I went to report to the police, they gave me an OB number and all that, but again, it's the same thing. Even the cops are looking at you like, what do you want us to do with this? So I know in terms of justice, I don't know if I'll be able to face these guys, like if I'll ever be able to hold them accountable. I don't know if I'll ever be able to ask them, why was this okay? Why was, not just for me, but why was this okay for anyone? Why was this okay? Why was it okay for you to allow a pedophile into a classroom with children? The first time that someone said something, the immediate action should have been fire him and make sure he does not work anywhere near children ever again. But for years, you allowed a pedophile to have access to children. I cannot even begin to quantify the damage that action has done. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to hold these people responsible for that. I don't know. But my prayer and my hope is that the more we talk about it, the more we stop acting like it's normal. And trauma is not something that people can outgrow. Like, I keep saying, it's just because now I'm old that I should be over it. It's not possible. As much as we might want it to be okay, for the person who's living with it, it's not. And it's not something I'm able to detach myself from either. The second time I had a panic attack is I was at Wangokanja Foundation and we were having a conversation about what are my legal options. And I remember at some point the legal assistant who was helping me work through like what would we be able to do legally, she noticed I was now stammering, I was having trouble speaking. She was like, okay, how about we stop and you have a conversation with like our therapist. And when she asked me to kind of recount what I remember, I can remember his smell. I remember how he smelled. And it's a nauseating feeling to remember that smell. But I remember that feeling of feeling so small. And feeling like this person is so big and they have so much power to hurt me. And in that moment, that fear of he's going to do it again became so real. And I think that's why I had the panic attack. But over time, I think I've been able to start to see that, no, he can't hurt me the way he did, right? So I can never go back to that place. I'm not in that danger anymore. But your mind doesn't know that. It can't tell that this was then and this is now. Your subconscious can't tell that. And it's almost like you relive it every time you have to talk about it. You can tell, even me, that I've been fighting back tears every time I have to talk about that. But trauma is not something you outlive. It's not something you outgrow. And unless you deal with it, it will find ways. It will find ways to manifest. It could be like for me, it is just toxic relationships. For others, could be alcoholism, substance abuse. For others, it could be, sex or whatever. For others, it could be harming yourself physically. So trauma has different ways of manifesting itself. And I think when we meet people that we don't seem to understand why they behave the way they do, instead of judging, maybe the question to ask is, what happened? What happened? Because over the years, I've had different names, different labels. There were sluts, prostitutes, different labels. But if I think about how I got introduced into sex, I didn't ask for that. That's not how I wanted to learn about sex. It wasn't even my choice. But I've had to live with the consequences of that. And people have only seen the outward manifestation and judged me for that. So it's made me very cautious when I see someone that I don't understand and I cannot place the behavior because maybe the behavior does not conform to what I would call normal. Instead of saying, what is wrong with that person? Now I ask, what happened to that person? And it makes me stop. And it makes me have more grace for people. Someone asked me, okay, Farahab, so what would justice look like for you? And I think for me, justice would look like an admission of guilt. That they knew I was not lying, that I was not making up any of that experience. I would want an admission of what they did, knowingly. That's what justice looks like for me. So every day of my life, I wake up, I go to work, I run a business now. So I do my best not to be defined by just that. It's not just me. That's not my only story. And I talk about it, as often as I can. I talk about it in spaces where I can. Because I know the more I talk about it, the more it doesn't reside inside of me. And also, by giving voice to this experience, I am shaming the person who did it. Because he should be ashamed. He should be ashamed of what he did. Absolutely ashamed. But I'm also giving voice to someone else. So if there is somebody else and, you've had to live with trauma of something that it made you feel ashamed, and, your trauma is yours. No one should tell you it's small. But this statement of, if you knew what happened to me, yours would look like a small thing. I'm sorry, no. Everybody's experience is legit and everybody's experience deserves space. So, for whatever your experience has been, however long you've had to live with it, it's okay to talk about it. Because there's a place where you're no longer a victim. There's a place where you decide, no, I'm not going to be a victim to this anymore. For me, it's taken about 20-something years to get here, but yeah, I'm no longer a victim. I'm no longer that terrified little girl. Especially, I speak my mind. I say what I mean and I mean what I say. Even the relationship I'm in now is very different. We can have hard conversations and very they wear suits and ties, which is awesome. That's like the thing he won me over. When he told me what he does for a living, I was like, yeah. That's what I want. Yeah, this is it. This is it. This is it. But it's someone who, in a very short time, we've had some very hard conversations, and he's never once made me feel guilty for saying how I feel. Or made me feel like, that was so small. Our relationship has been tested, but we've always seemed to come out on the other side together. So now I know what safety looks like for me, or at least I am discovering what safety looks like for me, what safe spaces look like for me, what safe people look like for me. And I think for my daughter, the advantage of me having gone through this is I'll be able to prepare her better for a world where I'm not able to protect her all the time. When she started school, I was so nervous. I was like, oh, my Lord. So her kindergarten had primarily female teachers, which was awesome. I was like, yes. Then now she went to grade 1. I was like, male teachers. I was like, yeah, no. I'm not sure how we're going to do this. But when I started to teach her about her body and what's acceptable and what's not. That's not something I learned. And maybe it's because I went through that experience that now I have the awareness that this is a conversation we need to have as early as 7 years. What's acceptable for your body, what is not. She keeps asking me, Mommy, why do you make me repeat it all the time? Like, because I need it to stick in your head. When she goes outside, she knows what are the rules for playing outside, what's safe, what is not safe. And my hope is that somehow my experience will not have been wasted, and that there will be no other child in my lineage or in my generation who will have to go through this, because I will have started with my own child to teach them that this is not okay and there is no point in your life where this is acceptable. Yeah, so maybe that is the silver lining in all of this. Yeah. So then is even as a child, I can report myself. I don't need to have an adult present. So even as a child, if this is happening, yeah, they can definitely go to the police and say that this is happening. And now, I don't know what they're called, but they're found in almost every police station. I think it's social workers or gender something. Ideally, these are the people who are supposed to receive this information and are supposed to help the child navigate this, right? But then there are also different foundations now. So like Wango Kanja is one that I mentioned. So it's called the Wango Kanja Foundation. There's FIDA, there's Cradle. So all this are now organizations that personally I've interacted with that deal with children's rights and children's welfare. But there are also different government bodies that are Whether they do it or not, that's a whole other story, but that are supposed to specifically deal with the social protection and welfare of children. So right now it's a bit more different than I think back then. There's less shaming for a victim when they come forward. And I think I would encourage, if someone young is watching this and this has happened to them and maybe they've tried to speak up to somebody, no one is listening, I would encourage them to even just go online and find where can you report, because these organizations are available online. And you can, and don't let anybody make you feel like your silence is keeping the peace. It's keeping the peace for who? Because it's not for you. So whose peace are you keeping, if not the person who did this to you? And what responsibility do you have to protect them? You don't have a responsibility to protect them. They made a decision to do something. They should face the consequences of their actions, right? And I remember one conversation we've been having back and forth about this, and someone who's a Christian, and I like to think that I live out my faith, was forgiveness. Forgive. And I struggled with that concept. Because it's like, first of all, the way you're saying forgive, it's like you're saying forgive, like let him off the hook. No. Forgive is to let me off the hook. Forgive is for me. So forgive for me looks like, someone said it the other day very well. She said, forgiveness is letting go of the hope for a better past. So I wish these things didn't happen. I really do. I wish none of this was part of my experience. So I can let go of that hope that it didn't happen, because it did. And that for me is forgiveness. I can accept what happened, and I can accept and say, yeah, when my story is told, this will be part of my story, that I was abused as a child. And that's okay, because I can't change that. So forgiveness is for me. It's not for the other person. For the other person, they need to take accountability for what they've done. Because if we make it that by forgiving, we let people off the hook, aren't we giving people a license to do these things? So I was like, Mazinga is, I don't agree. And I've held to that. It's a personal core belief, like, no, forgiveness does not mean I let the person off the hook, or I do not demand for answers or justice. Because even when we talk about Christ our Savior, the requirement for us to come into relationship with him is an acknowledgement of my own sin. Because if I don't take accountability for my own sin, I can't come to him. Because I first have to agree that, yeah, I'm not right. Yeah, I don't have it figured out. Yeah, I'm wrong. And I need you to help me live out better, right? So there has to be that acknowledgement. So how do you tell me it's different when it comes to you and I? No. So there are definitely a lot of places, and no one should, sell that story of forgive. It's not that. It's not let that person off the hook. No. Forgiveness is you releasing the hope of a better past, because that's not possible. Once it's happened, it's happened. And you just have to kind of move forward from that point. Yeah. Statistics that say for many victims of assault, and particularly sexual assault, it takes them about 20 years before they have the courage to come forward. So I am right within the statistic, right? So for a lot of victims, they'll keep this. And it's simply because of that stigma, because now people will know you a certain way. People will attach a certain thing to you, right? And there's that shame, because I don't know how this psychology works, but I don't know why victims feel like they did something. Maybe it's because you cannot wrap your head around, why would someone do something so vile to me if there is nothing wrong with me, right? So I would say to these bodies, look, being a victim is hard enough. It takes a lot of courage to come forward. And I would rather, because people will say, oh, what if someone is lying? I would rather we investigate and find someone is lying than we don't investigate and someone dies because they can't live with this anymore. So just check, ask questions. I don't think that's very hard. Ask questions. Go back to that place, investigate, let this person know. I felt like even when I went to the police, they were like, no, go and bring witnesses. I was like, I think it's only in Kenya. I don't know if the rest of the world have this problem. I think it's only in Kenya where you go report the crime, investigate the crime for yourself, come give the police a full dossier. Check you, man. Kitu ilifanyika hivi, hao ndo walifanya. Hii ndo evidence. Shikeni. Honestly, I think it's only here. I don't know if the rest of the world is like this, but I think it's only here. And I did. I tried. I asked guys, would you be willing? Would you be willing? But I knew it's not going to be easy. It's taken me so long. For some people, it happened almost 6 years after mine happened. For some, even 10 years after my incident happened. So you can imagine for these guys, they're now in college, they're in their 20s. Who wants to go back and have to deal with this mess? Nobody. So I think investigate. Ask those questions. Because you're right. Sometimes they will just freak out from the side that, hey, somebody's asking questions. But right now, in fact, I remember telling a friend of mine one time, it feels like the rumblings of a mad woman every time I talk about this. Because the school has been left to look like it is this perfect place with these perfect people running it. And so now, but I'm like, I'm done protecting their image. I'm done feeling like it's my responsibility to not rattle the boat. I'm done. It happened, and if anybody wants to ask me questions, I have never, like the fact that I'm willing to even go to the cops and say that this happened, I have no problem saying it happened, even to them. Let them come out and say it didn't happen. Let them come out and say it didn't happen. But I wish they would just investigate. Yeah. I don't think it's the victim's job to do the investigation. No. I think they would just investigate. Yeah. For instance, and I always think this is wishful thinking, but just wishfully thinking. If, for instance, when I came out and said that this is happening to me, and the school was like, what? Okay. First things first, this teacher needs to go today. I'm trying to think how many children would have been saved as a result. So, because he was allowed to do it, other teachers picked up the habit. So that abusive pattern continued with no consequences. So, if I was struggling the way I was, how many other adults right now are struggling? Right? And so if you take this school, this Lily Academy, as just a sample, now, imagine if 1 in every 5 schools, this was allowed to happen. And like you said, it wasn't just girls, boys too. Somehow, these people are supposed to be functional enough to be good parents, to have become responsible adults. Like, the effect, even the economical effect of trauma. Right now, suicide is one of the leading causes of death among young people. Right? And when you have your young people dying in droves, basically, it's like you will not have a workforce. So, it's not just like, oh, these guys are softies. No, this thing has serious implications in people's lives, in economies, in how families are run and operate. And if we get to a place where we take it seriously, because the only thing that is required is when a child speaks up, let it be investigated. I would rather it be a lie and we teach this child about, hey, look, this is not something you can joke about. This is not something, because sometimes what I have seen, sometimes someone says it, but it's not them. They're saying it for someone else. So try and go back to, why would this child say this? Why would they come out and say something like this? Because I don't understand how at 11 years or 10 years old, I had the wherewithal to think about damaging the reputation of somebody. How would a 10-year-old think of that? How can a 10-year-old be malicious? You get, how can a 10-year-old have malicious intent? So I think the thing to do is to allow them to say, like for me, I made a decision that for my daughter, I'm going to talk to her about what is safe, what is not, what is acceptable, and what is it. Your body, who should touch what, why, right? And if somebody does it and it makes you uncomfortable, what do you do? Because I needed to teach her how to have a voice. So if somebody was to touch her inappropriately, she would probably have the understanding of this is inappropriate, maybe not have the language for it, but have this sensation of, I don't think that was right. But what I'm teaching her is have a language for it. And this is how you talk about it. I show her, I tell her, when somebody touches here, this is what you come and tell mommy. You tell me that somebody did this and they put their hand here. And this is how it made you feel. So we used words like, I felt icky or I felt funny when he said it. And we try, because right now I go with the level where she's at. As she gets older, because it will not stop just now. As we get older, we'll have, more raw conversations about it, I think starting from that point. So now when she speaks up in school, I don't expect her to be shut up. I expect the school to take up action. I expect the school to do something about it. And for me, why I chose the school she's in right now is because I was actually told of an incident where in that school, a teacher did something inappropriate and there was no conversation. She was let go of. So I felt like that's a school I can feel safer taking my child. And it's not very far from my former school, by the way. But I said I would rather she be illiterate than step in that school. So schools have to create the environment for children to know how to talk about this. And I think there should be stricter action. I am seeing, especially now in the news, you're seeing even teachers getting very strict sentences for inappropriate behavior with students, no matter how long ago it was. I have seen like 3 cases where they've been sentenced. So I think we're getting there. And I'm glad that we are. But yeah, we still have a long way to go. Yeah. So my podcast is called The Father's Heart. And it's hosted by a platform called God's Sketchbook. So if you go on YouTube, you would search for God's Sketchbook and then you would find The Father's Heart as part of the program. And it was birthed out of frustration because I was not working. I was struggling with, God, where are you in this mess? Like I'm dealing with all of this and I don't know where you are. And in different ways, I started to see God show up for me in terms of provision, in terms of peace, in terms of safety. And when we were having a conversation with a guy who produces it, it was just like a casual conversation. And he said, what would you call that? And I would say, I think it's just an exemplification of the Father's heart for us. I'm like, that's a great name for a podcast. And that's... And that is how the Father's Heart was born. And really, the Father's Heart is just a safe space for people to talk about, and especially people of the Christian faith who feel conflicted in their faith because of their experiences in life. Because I don't think God is like offended when we have questions or we have doubt. I do think it's not always acceptable to bring it up in the church, but I was like, you know what? I'm not a pastor. Nobody's going to be like, oh, you cannot say that. You cannot do that. So I was like, yeah, my place is going to be the odd one out, but really not just odd one out just for the sake of being odd one out. But I feel a lot of our frustrations in our faith, we're not the only ones going through it. And God doesn't want you to fake it with him. You know, if it's bad, it's bad. I mean, if he can already see it, if you believe what the Bible says about him, he can already see it. So why are we all showing up in church like we are all good and perfect and nothing is bothering us when some of us are like, God, if you really loved me, why did you let this happen? God, if you really cared about me, why did you let this happen? And we just try and kind of explore that and try and find the different ways that God still shows up for us today, and hopefully make that contagious so that people don't feel like God is so far removed from our everyday experiences. I mean, I know firsthand He cares about us deeply. I have seen it in my own life. I mean, there's no reason for Him to preserve my life, no matter how hard I tried to make it. But there's no reason, but He did. And now I can see it. I can see it was Him saying, no, this doesn't become the end of you. And I've still got you, I've still got you. And it might have been hard in that time to see it. But I'm hoping that as we talk about Him more in the Father's heart, and we talk about it from a very real perspective, and it's not wishful thinking, and God as this person who cannot be questioned, should not be questioned, and cannot be, like, the way you would deal with your dad. I only imagine what it's like to deal with your dad. But I imagine if I had my dad around, I'd ask him, like, why did you make that decision? It affected me in this way. And maybe if he explained to me, I would see it. Or maybe I would not see it at that time. I would see it when I'm older. I would probably understand it when I'm a bit older. But he will have shown me over time that all that he was doing was just his way of protecting me, right? So that's really the Father's heart. It's just a safe space for, you don't have to be a Christian, by the way, to watch or participate in the Father's heart, because it's really just a safe space for whatever's going on in your life. It's just a safe space.